Welcome into the install with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. 27-3 was the score we were talking about this time last week, Greg, except this one in favor of the Tennessee Titans, putting it on the Cincinnati Bengals here at Nissan Stadium. A win where the offense looked as good as it has at any point this year.
In the second quarter, for sure.
Yeah. That is a very, very important clarification to make.
Yes.
And one that we will break down because that is where all three of their touchdown drives.
They did some really good things in the second quarter that were very, very impressive. And to me, it's something to build on. Look, it's tough to really then look at the third and fourth quarter the same way, simply because of the nature of the score and the way their defense was playing. The game becomes different when you're ahead like that. But they did some really, really good things in the second quarter.
Yeah. So let's start there with the first of the touchdown drives that they had, Greg. Obviously, Derrick Henry involved in some capacity in the final two. But what did you see from them on that drive that led them with the opportunity to get up in that game?
So the first touchdown drive was which one, ending with what?
So that ended with the Nick Westbrook-Akina touchdown.
Oh, that was a beautiful drive.
Yeah.
I love that drive. There were a number of plays that I thought were really interesting. First of all, they played a lot out of 12 personnel and were really, really effective out of it. And it'll be curious to see if that's something they continue. I like what they did formationally out of 12 personnel. They had a lot of closed formations. The Hopkins had the 38-yarder on that drive, which essentially was just a stutter go. But what was interesting about the play was they had trips to the boundary, which you don't see very often. And Hopkins had a really plus split to the wide side of the field. And of course, he was matched on Taylor Britt one-on-one, and he ran a stutter go and beat him. And by the way, the play prior to that, Hopkins was physically handled by Taylor Britt and could not get into his route cleanly, which resulted in a Tannehill sack, because it was essentially a bang play action quick throw where Hopkins was the only read. There was no other read, and Hopkins could not get into his route cleanly. So Tannehill had to leave the pocket, and he got run down by Murphy. But then the next play, Hopkins beat Taylor Britt on the stutter go. Then I love the Wiley 24-yard play, which was the very next play. I thought that was great design out of 12 personnel. Again, it was a closed boundary with what we call a four-man surface, 4 players to the right of the center, all attached. I love the hard outside zone run action to Henry. Wiley did a great job initially showing run blocking. Then he released into the seam. That kind of play to me fits the Titans offensive profile really well, Buck, because of the personnel, the formation, and the hard run action. So, that's the kind of play that is what the Titans, in a sense, are all about. And then it ended with Westbrook-Akina. I love that play, too. I thought that was a really cool concept as well. That was the very next play. It broke down the Bengals 4 across red zone coverage, and everybody plays 4 across in the red zone. It's a very common coverage. They played that quarters look. Again, outside zone run action to the field, and Westbrook-Akina crossed the formation behind the line of scrimmage opposite to the boundary. And basically, because of the hard run action, they caught the safety Scott, and he was not in position to play Westbrook-Akina. So, they used the 12 personnel, they used the run action. I thought that drive was kind of a fun drive to watch.
It was a fun quarter to watch. Certainly, we'll talk about the other 2 touchdown drives here in just a second. But Greg, I'm glad you brought up the personnel, the 2 tight end sets, because I thought in this game I saw Wiley and Chig both executing not just their assignments, but their blocking assignments as well as they have in any other game, which allowed them to stay on the field more. It felt like.
Yeah, and Wiley, you're starting to see that he's a tall, athletic guy. And he's obviously going to continue to get snaps. But look, I think we all know they're a team that needs the pass game to work to some degree off the run game. They're not a drop back passing team. So they need the run game element. And obviously you have Henry, who, gained over 100 yards in this game, I think for the first time this season, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. And I thought he looked good, by the way, in this game. I thought he looked very good. but they need the run game element to be a factor and to be able to work off that. And I thought the personnel, the hard run action, these were not flash fakes. This was hard run action, and it really impacted the defense, and it set up, a number of throws that's the way they have to work. And no, I liked it a lot. I thought it was, like I said, watching that second quarter was a fun watch.
Yeah, they're able to get the Bengals to go 3 and out on the next drive, Greg, and we'll talk about the defense, I'm sure, here in just a little bit. Then they have the 5-play or 4-play rather 73-yard drive that results in the 29-yard touchdown run by Derrick Henry, which was his longest gain on the ground of the year. What did you see on that particular drive?
Now, that drive had, obviously, it ended with a touchdown. I can't remember the specific other plays.
So what they had that fumble by Todd.
Oh, yeah, that's why. That's why I didn't make note of it.
26-yard gain.
Yeah, because that was the big play, and I didn't make note of it because it ended up being kind of a second reaction semi-gimmick play, but it gained 26 yards or whatever it was. But the Henry 29-yard touchdown I thought was a fascinating run because it was blocked on the play side, almost like a gap scheme run, but there was no puller because Wiley was in the backfield, and so he ended up being the kick-out blocker on the D.N. Hendrickson, which you often see in a gap scheme run. You get a puller who's a kick-out blocker, but he was in the backfield, so he wasn't a puller. But then you had the down block, the double team on the 3 technique with Dillard and Radens, and that's what you get in gap scheme. So it was kind of a gap scheme principle without a puller. So I thought it was really interesting how they got to it. And then it was all Henry. I mean, obviously he got to the second level, but then it was all Henry, and that was a great run.
Yeah, it was a pretty vintage Derrick Henry performance on the day. It felt like where they got adequate enough blocking to just allow him a little bit of daylight, Greg. It just feels like he needs just a slight amount of help to be able to make some of those plays, and he got it on Sunday.
And I felt like this was a Derrick Henry game, not just because he gained 122 yards and had a beautiful touchdown run. I felt watching the tape like this was a Derrick Henry game because even when things weren't blocked, I'd look up and he gained 5 yards. And that's the way he always ran, and that's one of the things. There were many, obviously, because he's been a great back. But one of the things that I always felt made him a great back was not just his ability to take it to the house, but the fact that when it was blocked for 2, he got 6. And I thought this game had that feel to it. And he ran really, really well, I thought.
Well, and on top of throwing a touchdown pass, which was
That's right. Yeah, again, I didn't mark that down. Great. Look, here's the bottom line. I had a great conversation with someone today about red zone football. And the fact is, in the red zone, you have to be creative. It's hard in the red zone. There are a lot of teams that struggle in the red zone, like the Dallas Cowboys, for instance. And you just, at some point, you have to get creative. The really good teams, the Chiefs, the Eagles, they're creative in the red zone. And you have to be.
All that to say, Greg, because that play was obviously a lot of fun to watch, and Jeff Simmons is involved on offense, and it's going to give a big laugh, right? Jeff calling for the ball like he was open. But I think that, early returns on Tim Kelly, we're not making any definitive statements right now, but have you kind of started to figure out what it is that they want to be as a football team based on what you're seeing from how Tim goes about calling these games?
Here's what I would say. I would say that Tim Kelly, in my view, would like to do more than he's doing, but he understands his personnel. And now this game, I'm very curious to see the next game. And by the way, that game's in our matchup show. I'm actually doing a piece on the Titans defense in the matchup show, but and it's one of my favorite plays of their defense all year. But anyway, we can get to that in a moment. But I think he's understanding what his offense is and what then you can do with the personnel that he has. And to me, that's coaching. Now, that's why I think the next couple of games will be very, very important to see how it plays out. Because let's understand a couple of things. And these are just what I'm about to say. It's all tape study with me. I mean, I don't have a personal agenda here. They're not going to be a pure drop back passing team. That Tannehill, I don't believe, can do that on a consistent basis the way other quarterbacks can. I don't think they have enough at the skill positions to be able to do that. Now, again, when Burks comes back, but he's still an unknown quantity to some degree. So, I think he's beginning, like to me, the way they use the 12 personnel, the way they use the hard run action, the way they used some motion elements, I think he's understanding what he needs to do with the personnel he has and to maximize those players. And I think that's, ideally what good coaching is. And that's why I think the next couple of games, Buck, will be really interesting to watch to see how they play out. Because this team can't just line up and play. They're not, and plus, keep one thing in mind. This helps you compensate for your O-line because you can't just line up and play with this O-line. It's just, again, I'm telling you what the tape shows. This O-line by NFL standards is below average. So you can't just line up and play.
Right. And that takes us to the next question that I want to ask you, Greg, because Nicholas Petit-Frere, formerly the starting right tackle, he's since been supplanted by Chris Hubbard because of a gambling suspension. That was amended on Friday to where Nicholas was able to come back and return to practice today and is theoretically going to be available on Sunday. He was working at the left tackle spot today in practice, which is the first time that we've seen that since he arrived here. I wonder what your evaluation of him was coming out of Ohio State, where he did play left tackle his senior year.
Well, here's as you mentioned his name, I pulled up my evaluation of him coming out in the 2021 draft. I thought that he had size, length, athleticism, and movement to play left tackle. I thought his tape in 2021 showed a developing player with the physical traits necessary to play left tackle. But the tape did show some concerns that had to be addressed. Now, again, I'm not there as his coach, so I don't know how they're addressing those issues. I thought that on 45-degree and vertical pass sets in college, I'm speaking now, he showed a glaring tendency to bend at the waist when he struck with his hands. And that's a problem that needs to be cleaned up, because what that does is it results in balance and body control issues, and it led to him getting beat. And it really showed up against two rushers in particular, Arnold Ebiketie from Penn State and Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan. And he had significant problems with both those players. But there were too many good snaps in pass protection where he really looked comfortable and efficient with really good technique and overall movement to believe that he could become a quality left tackle. But he has to, again, I know he played right tackle last year. I think we both agree the year was up and down for him. There were times you and I both felt that, hey, this guy could be a really good right tackle. And there were other times we felt, boy, he's having some issues. So we'll see. But, they may have to give him a shot. Dillard it's 4 games. And, I don't think the results are particularly promising. Again, the tape tells you that.
Yeah, and that's all it is. That's just what the tape is what is visible to Greg on the tape as we talk about this. This is not opinion based, of course, as the audience knows. Speaking of reinforcements, by the way, Greg, they will get your boy Kyle Phillips back in the lineup. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how long he'll be out there, but he's back.
Just hope he can stay healthy and be on the field, because I think he can add a lot to the pass game, particularly on third down, because I think he's the kind of receiver that when it's 3rd and 6, he gets you 7. I think he's that kind of receiver. I think he knows how to find voids. I think he can separate at the top of his stem versus man in the short area. He's not a vertical guy, but I think he can really help a pass game in a sustaining way. And again, he's, as an NFL player, there's no question he's an unknown quantity. I don't want people to think that he's all of a sudden stepping in and he's Cooper Kupp. But I think that he can help a pass game based on his traits and what he showed in college. I really liked him coming out of UCLA.
As we tape this on a Wednesday afternoon, he is trending towards being available on Sunday against the Colts. So as Greg brought up, the NFL matchup show, Titans and Colts, is going to be featured. Greg is breaking down the Titans defense in his particular segment. So you mentioned one of your favorite plays from them on the year, Greg. Could you expand that a little bit for the audience?
Yeah, it was the first third down against the Chargers where Danico Autry sacked Justin Herbert. And I loved it because of the disguise, the late movement. They lined up in a 7-man pressure front look. and they ended up dropping out and playing cover 2 invert. And what invert means, it means that your corners become your deep half players as opposed to your safeties. And they ended up only rushing 4, and they got the one-on-one that Coach Bowen always wants, one-on-one for his pass rushers. And they got Autry one-on-one with the right tackle based on the protection scheme by the Chargers. He beat the right tackle, and they got a sack because where Herbert wanted to throw the ball got taken away by the late movement and the rotation to the cover 2 invert. I thought it was just beautifully done. And it's very representative of the kinds of things that the Titans do on defense, particularly on third down.
Well, and I'm glad that you mentioned Autry, Greg, not just because I have him on the radio show tomorrow. I'm going to interview him as
well, you can tell him how much I like him. I think he's a really good player.
Well, I just for the context of the audience, like, this dude is consistently disruptive, Greg. And I know that they're playing in a scheme where Bowen is trying to create those favorable matchups for them, trying to get them those one-on-ones, and he's adept at taking advantage of them.
Yep.
But he just down in, down out, even as he gets into his mid-30s now, the dude continues to find ways to win.
And he allows them to do the things that Coach Bowen wants to do because he plays outside in your base and often in the nickel, and then moves inside and dime next to Simmons. And he's very good in both spots because, in their base defense, Tart and Simmons tend to be the tackles, and Autry plays defensive end. And in the when you get to dime, he, like I said, he moves inside with Simmons. So, he's multi-positional, multi-dimensional in his use, can line up pretty much in any defensive line spot and be an effective player. And he's a really good pass rusher. I mean, obviously we don't talk about him, nationally, because he's not getting 16 sacks, but he's a really good pass rusher. Look, didn't he miss a number of games last year?
Missed 3 or 4.
And I think he had something like 9 sacks, right?
Incredibly disruptive.
Yeah, I mean, he could have had 12, 13 sacks if he was healthy for those games, and then maybe people would talk about him. But I remember when he signed, was he a sign or a trade?
He was a free agent signing. They let him walk in Indy.
But I remember, and you and I were not doing this at that time, but I was still doing radio in Nashville for the station. And I remember when they signed him, a lot of people hadn't really known about him, even though he was in the division. But, he's not a household name. And I said, that's a really good signing. And because he did the same thing in Indianapolis. And he was really, just like Arden Key, a really good signing. I mean, and it's showing up so far through the first quarter of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I know John Robinson's not here anymore, but after Ben Jones, that's arguably the most important free agent signing that John had was Autry. I couldn't believe they let him walk out of Indianapolis.
Yeah,
just to come down the road here to Nashville. But certainly it's go ahead.
Greg, I think defensively too. I think you're seeing quality play from Alshire and Gibbons. I mean, defensively, I think they're really good.
Well, what have you noticed from Gibbons? Because we haven't talked a lot about him, and obviously, I think he's a bit of a curiosity to the fans right now.
I just think he's a heady, smart player. I don't think he's going to have 150 tackles, but I think that he's heady, smart. I think he moves a little better, particularly if he gets a chance to stretch out a little. You wouldn't say he's sudden or dynamic or explosive in a short area, but I think he sees things well. I think, as we like to say, I think his key and diagnosis is strong. I just think he's a solid football player. He's one of those glue guys. Every defense needs one of those glue guys. And I think Alshire has played really well.
Yeah, certainly a great game against the Bengals over the weekend. They'll have a tough test, a frisky Colts team.
Yeah.
Richardson, the offense, it's early returns again. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but he looks so explosive and brings such an explosive element to that offense. And I know Shane Steichen, who I'm sure you've had some kind of interaction with over the course of his time in Philadelphia, seems to be really honed in on what it is that Richardson can do well right now.
And he can make outstanding individual plays at any point in the game. And that's the issue with quarterbacks like Richardson early in their careers when they're not consistent snap after snap after snap. But if the game's close and all of a sudden it's, 17-13 in the fourth quarter, Richardson can be 9 for 21, and then he makes 2 plays that are unbelievable. And, you come away from watching the game and you go, well, he didn't play that well, but he made these 2 plays, and that's what he is. And as a coach, you have to be aware that that can happen at any time and be prepared to defend the kinds of plays he can make, which are, obviously pretty impressive because of the size, the strength, the arm strength. You just don't know when those plays can happen. But he's also going to have, really bad plays where you go, ooh, but, he's a young player. I mean, he only played, what, I don't know, 17, 18 games in college and started 13. I mean, he did not play a lot. He's a kid who's not played a lot of college football. But I got to tell you this, when you watch the tape, he doesn't seem overwhelmed by what's going on. He seems totally fine and aware and with an understanding. Now, having said that, can you fool him with disguise and late movement? Of course you can. He's a young quarterback who just hasn't seen enough. But he's also the kind of quarterback that you could fool him with disguise and late movement, and then he could still, on that very same play, could run for 30 yards.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the we'll call it poise that he has brought early on, Greg, because that's such a, we've talked about it with Malik, right? You're getting sped up in your mechanics, in your processing, in your isolation and elimination, as we've talked about before.
Yeah.
Richardson will of course have those moments, as you mentioned, but right now it's not hindering him overwhelmingly.
Well, one thing to keep in mind, do you by chance know anything about their injury report?
In fact, I might have the latest for you right now,
because they started the rookie Freeland at left tackle last week.
Yeah, they have not sent out. Oh, okay. Hang on. Let's see.
Because I think their normal starter is Raymond, right?
Yes, correct. Raymond is still in the concussion protocol. He did not practice today.
All right. So let's assume, so people understand we're talking on a Wednesday. Freeland is not ready to play in the NFL. I didn't particularly like him coming out of BYU. That doesn't make me right. I'm just giving you my evaluation of his tape as a BYU tackle. But he's certainly not ready to play in the NFL. So that's something to keep an eye on, because he's going to be going up against, a really good D line. He's going to be going up against Key. That's a concern for the Colts if Freeland has to play left tackle again.
The wild card here, Greg, is Jonathan Taylor's status. He practiced fully for the first time today, activated off PUP.
Oh, okay.
He could be available on Sunday. We're not sure yet. Obviously, far too early in the week to talk about what he may look like, because it's the first time he's practiced fully in several months at this point. But what I guess are you curious about him as an addition to this offense at some point?
Let me answer it that way, because we don't know about Taylor right now.
Right.
So let's leave him aside for the moment, because anybody can speculate, but the point is they do want to run the ball. And Moss, over the last number of weeks, has shown to be a sustaining back in the context of their offense. He gets hard yards in confined space. He was a great runner in college, and he's featured in both zone and gaps in their gap scheme run game. And, he's a nice complement to the way they want to play. So if it turns out to be Moss getting the majority of the carries, he's still someone you have to deal with. 2 weeks ago, he had 30 for 122. This week, I believe he had 18 carries, something like that. I could be wrong, but it was a good number. So they do want to run the ball. This is not just Anthony Richardson right, Anthony Richardson left, Anthony Richardson throwing the ball. They do want to run the ball with a back.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun game. That's why it's on the matchup show this weekend. Of course, set your DVRs, check it out on demand on ESPN Plus, and of course, you can catch it on Sunday mornings before your NFL action gets underway. Greg, I'm always excited for divisional games. Should be a fun one. The only thing I'll be missing in Indy this time around is you and Kirby Allen Kirby, but we'll make
there you go.
Well,
we'll figure that out at the combine, this coming year,
Indeed we will. Greg, appreciate the time as always. Have a great weekend, bud.
All right, thanks, Buck.